I think the maintenance of effort discussion is a very big issue. And at this moment in history, I think our school system would be better without the strengthened maintenance of effort constraints which affect the thinking of appropriators here at the county council. It would be nice if we could have a real dialogue with the school system about what its needs are, and we could try to meet those needs. But it is an absolute fact that we lived through the experience of the recession. We learned from that experience. The economy will surely turn down again at some point in the future, and we are reluctant to appropriate substantially above the relatively arbitrary formula limit because it commits us to meeting that number every year in the future. There's been some exaggeration in the midst of the election campaign. I respect all of my colleagues who run for office. I wouldn't say it's a straitjacket exactly, but I think there is a constraint. I think there's a disincentive in our thinking. We just got the press release, I didn't speak earlier on this topic, describing this OLO report that we received, finding an increase in the stratification of MCPS high schools by income, race, and ethnicity. A majority of the school system's low-income Black and Latino students attend high-poverty high schools, and a majority of MCPS's non-poor white and Asian students attend low-poverty high schools. Working with the school system to target resources where they are most needed becomes more difficult when we know that they're going to get a certain amount each year. We're basically robots here. If we don't appropriate what the formula calls for, the state comptroller takes our income tax revenue and gives it to them. We're disinclined to really engage in a real discussion with the school system about what their real needs are. I don't personally have confidence in their projections of what their real needs are, because for the last 5 years, even during the 2 years in the depths of the recession where we didn't hit maintenance of effort, the school system couldn't spend all the money we appropriated. They didn't spend all the money we appropriated. They ran larger and larger fund balances each year. So to say MOE doesn't matter, I think it matters. I think what doesn't matter is a pitched debate over 26 million here or 26 million there in the course of a $2.5 billion budget, when we know from recent experience that they don't exactly know which accounts they'll spend out of. They don't exactly know when they'll draw down certain contracts, and by the end of the year, they'll have a substantial amount left over. So I don't believe the threats that I get or the dire consequences of wherever we wind up on any of these numbers, whether we're at Mr. Andrews' preferred limit of MOE or whether we're at Mr. Leggett's proposal of 26 million above MOE, or the school board's recommendation of 51 million above MOE. I think all of these numbers are relatively arbitrary. And if I get another term on this council, I'm going to spend more time learning about the school system budget, and I'm going to spend more time at this dais asking real questions of the school system. We don't have direct program authority, but my constituents expect that we're going to spend some time learning about how half of our budget is appropriated. One of my greatest regrets about the years I've spent here is that we spend less time discussing the $2.5 billion we appropriate to the school system than we do on some controversial contracts and issues in the amounts of $10,000 or $100,000. And there's been a change in the leadership of the Education Committee, which I welcome, and I've enjoyed working with my friend, the chairman of the Education Committee. And if I should get another 4 years here, I have great admiration and respect for our school system. My sons, the Leventhal boys, have gotten a tremendous education, superb. There's no private school that could have given my kids a better education than what they've gotten in MCPS. But it's our obligation to address these disparities that we just got a report on this morning. And our constituents expect the county council to play a role. And we're not robots. But the maintenance of effort formula turns us into robots. And the other thing, which Mr. Elrich has highlighted so many, many times, is that it removes the incentive to be efficient. If you know that you're going to get a guarantee of more money every year, why would you do the hard work of identifying duplication, redundancy, and waste? Why would you bother? Because every year you're going to get more. It's human nature. I am not critical of our school system. I have the greatest admiration for the hard work that our school system does to educate our kids. I think it's a fantastic school system. I brag about it all the time. But it's human nature not to do hard work if you don't have to do it. And if you're going to get more money guaranteed every year, you're not going to do the hard work of saving money. And that falls to us then to understand where there's duplication. I know there's duplication. I know there's duplication and redundancy in the administration of health benefits. We should have one benefits administrator for all of our agencies. I know there's duplication and redundancy in procurement. We make some joint purchasing in terms of fuel and paper and some other things, but we could do a lot more. I know that there's redundancy in planning, and this is a serious problem, where the projections that our planning board uses for students in the next generation are different than the projections that the school system itself uses. And we hear more and more complaints, and we've surfaced this issue of whether school construction is on pace with the load of students entering the schools, and there's a disconnect there. And we should measure our enrollment projections by one yardstick. And we should make budget assumptions by one yardstick. We have a sincere problem. We have a disconnect where the agency responsible for spending half of our budget is under no constraint to balance the budget. And so we get a request from the school system that may or may not have any relationship to the revenues we expect to receive. And so I think that MOE is a very serious issue, and I think these issues of on what basis do we make our spending decisions is a very serious issue, and I think the numbers that we throw out are somewhat random. And if Ms. Hughes, for whom I have great respect, disagrees with me, I'm going to ask her now, on what basis did the county executive decide that $26 million above MOE was just the right amount, or was he simply splitting the difference between the formula number and the school board's request? Because it sure looks like he was just splitting the difference and striking a political compromise. To the man on the street, to any observer, it would just appear that, well, we don't want to do 51, that's too much in the direction of above MOE. We don't want to do MOE for many reasons. You know, it is that time on the calendar after all, and we want to satisfy the parents and the education establishment. 26, split the difference. Was that the basis, or was there a more scientific and programmatic decision for the number identified by Mr. Leggett?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking the director of OMB what was the basis for deciding that 26, which happens to be right in the middle of MOE and the school board's request, was the right number from Mr. Leggett's perspective.
That is not how Mr. Leggett came to $26 million, if that's your question.
How did he arrive at $26
There
million?
were a number of discussions. It was partly based on affordability and what some of his other priorities are. The development of the executive's operating budget, just as the development of your final operating budget, is an iterative process. It is absolutely not a one-time point of decision, and that's how he came up with it, was ultimately balancing all of the competing needs, and that was where he came out on MCPS's operating budget.
Well, I'm just going to reiterate, it may not be true for other counties, but it is my strong belief that in Montgomery County, our school system would actually be better off at this point without the MOE constraint on the thinking of the executive and appropriators here at the council.